And I got invited to a Bible study, and the title of it was Thirsty Thursday at the Well. And it was a drinking Bible study. It was a bunch of moms and women in their 40s who were going to get together on a Thursday night and read the Bible and drink wine. And I was like, if you're familiar with the passage with the scripture, thirsty, through the well, the woman at the well, right? It's like, the story about Jesus meeting the woman at the well and recognizing her and meeting her where she is and all of these things. And it's like, well, and then I was just like flabbergasted that like to pour wine on top of that, right? Was like, we're just going to pour wine all over the scripture and drink, and people are going to be drunk talking about scripture. And it was just mind-boggling to me. And it was the thing that I needed to be like, whoa, this is so conditioned in the culture. This is everywhere. It is so hard to escape this. It is so easy. Everything everywhere makes it so easy to keep saying yes to the thing that's killing you. And it's killing you creatively, it's killing you emotionally, and now it's killing you spiritually. And I will not stand for that anymore, because I had a really tight relationship with my God. I really, really loved my spirituality and my faith life. What I didn't know was that sobriety and recovery were going to blow that open.
Welcome to the Sober Curator podcast, where sobriety isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's the ultimate life hack. I'm Alysse Bryson, your fearless guide to a world where hangovers are canceled, fun is mandatory, and we still know how to shut down a dance floor, just with better shoes.
And I'm Tamara Routley, aka T-Bouge, your co-pilot, chaos coordinator, and the one who keeps Alysse from turning this podcast into a full-blown reality show. Buckle up, sober party people.
From lifestyle and travel to pop culture and zero-proof cocktails, we're serving up the stories, trends, and guests that prove sobriety isn't just about what you're missing. It's about finally remembering where you left your keys. Let's get the party started. Welcome to another episode of the Sober Curator. My name is Alysse Bryson, and I will be your host today. I am so excited about the content we are talking about today. If you're not familiar with the Sober Curator, we are a lifestyle hub, and there are a bunch of us contributing content in different lifestyle sections, from beverage reviews to entertainment to travel to lifestyle. And of course, one of my sections that I love the most is our spiritual Gangster section. So this wing of the Sober Curator is a haven for those on a sober journey who like a little twist of spiritual sass. And we invite you to join us in a world of meditation, astrology, intentionality, philosophy, stoicism, and spiritual reflection, all while keeping your feet and your sobriety on the ground. So we have a bunch of different curators here with us today, and I'm going to introduce them one by one, and they'll tell you a little bit about what they do for the site. Daniel G. Garza, I would love to start with you because I think out of the group, you've been doing the Card Devo with us here the longest, and would love to just hear a little bit from you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Alysse. That translated to you are the oldest, and let me get to you first. I'm just kidding. Yes, I can't remember exactly when I met you, but I feel like I've known you like most of my sobriety life. Came into knowing about the Sober Curator, and I think I submitted or I presented something to you. Nonetheless, I have been presenting the weekly horoscopes I think 4 years now, probably.
Pretty close.
So for those of you that are new to Sober Curator or the ones that have been around for a while, every Monday morning, if you are getting your weekly sober horoscopes, those come from me.
And you know, Daniel, what I love about your sober horoscopes is you do it in under a minute. Like, when it started, I was like, no way. How's he going to do this? Right. And then we started doing it. And then they started going viral. And I was like, holy crap. A lot of people want to get this 1 minute sober horoscope for the week as a little like, let's get the week going. And it doesn't hurt that you're adorable on your YouTube videos. That doesn't hurt either.
I'll thank my parents for that. But yes, who knew that doing things under a minute would work? It doesn't work for everything. Ask my boyfriend, but everything, yeah, those came up because, in the beginning, I think there was a TikTok. Like when you begin, it only gives you like 60 seconds to do something. And I was like, how can I compete with other horoscopes out there? And I was like, let's do this under a minute. And come on, as recovering alcoholics and drug addicts, we don't have the attention span that most normal people have. We give you 1 minute and then we move on to something else. And I was excited because, yes, some of the horoscopes have gone viral. And the cool thing is that it's ongoing. It keeps me motivated. And if you have the attention span that I have, 1 minute is about all I have to give you. And you know what? And on the serious side, it gives me a commitment. It gives me something to do every week. I don't go to a normal meeting. I don't have a home group, but this is my service of every week. I make sure that I get those to y'all on Friday night so they can be up Monday morning. And I really do get excited doing them. Plus, I'm an attention ham. I love the feedback. When people reach out and say, hey, you were on point, you're keeping me on track, or I've been listening to you for so much time, and I love the advice that you give me. That's really good feedback.
Well, I love that, Daniel, and I love you. And we've been fortunate enough to meet in person 2 different times. I'm in Seattle, you're in Laguna Beach, and we've met once in Seattle and once in LA. So it's been super fun I definitely consider you a close friend after working together all these years. And my week doesn't start until I get your email, because that's the thing I do to get the week rolling with the Sober Curator. So I can't start a week without you. That's for sure.
We're almost a rom-com.
We are. We're like a digital meet cute. I think the site we met on was Yana. You Are Not
That's
Alone at the beginning of the pandemic. I believe.
That's right.
And I was just getting started. And I think that's where we met, if I remember correctly.
I still post there, so you can still go there and check them out. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, next we're moving on to Teresa. Teresa has been writing. She actually is best known on our site for her amazing travel adventures all over the globe. But she saw all the activity that was happening in the spiritual gangster section of the site. And she's like, Alysse, yoga is more than poses, and I have a lot of thoughts on the subject. What do you think about starting a column for that? And I was like, absolutely, let's go. So she started that at the beginning of 2024. And that's another piece that every month when it comes in, I'm so excited for it to come in and spend time with your words and put together some artwork. So Teresa, we'd love to hear about Sobriety in Flow.
Hi, all. Thanks for that nice introduction. I'm feeling a little envious right now because I have not met any of you in person, and I really hope to at some point, although it is fun to see you all on the Zoom calls. So yeah, I'm a longtime yoga practitioner and yoga teacher, and I've written quite a bit about the subject, but I've really been having a good time with the chance here to relate the yoga philosophy to sobriety. And I like what Daniel says with the 1 minute. I've been trying to keep these pretty short too, so it's not like a terrible slog because a lot of spiritual writing can be quite the slog to get through.
Do you have a favorite piece that you have done in 2024?
Oh, I don't know. They kind of blend together because I've been writing about the yamas and niyamas this year. And those are sort of the yoga 10 commandments, the things you should do and the things you shouldn't do. I mean, there are things like nonviolence and not stealing and cultivating contentment and things like that. So they're kind of all of a piece to me, but I wouldn't say some I'm better at following than others. I think we talked about that a little, at least some of the hoarding tendencies and not liking to let go.
Yeah, the hoarding article hit a little too close to home. Look at my background, you guys. But hey, I've said this before and I will say it again. It is not hoarding if your stuff is cool. It is not, right? I don't think so anyway. Well, thank you, Teresa. I'm sure we'll hear more from you in a little bit, but it's a great column to check out. Highly recommend. It comes out once a month.
Thanks.
Derek Castleman, you are up next. You are our sober stoic, which I have to be honest with you, I didn't know much about stoicism before you joined our group. So when you reached out about a year ago, I was like, I don't know much about this, but I'm really excited to learn. Plus, I was excited. We tend to get more females wanting to work on the Sober Curator than males. So it's always exciting when a male reaches out and wants to be part of our crew. So Derek, let's hear a little bit about you.
So Derek Castleman, Sober Stoic. So what got me into writing stoicism philosophy with recovery is that I was kind of like early into my recovery, and it was actually someone in my sober living who had been the one that like turned me on to this. He was like, well, here's like a really great philosophy to actually read. It was mainly because I was like kind of finding myself like a little bit stagnant in my recovery. And well, what was kind of interesting when I was like reading into the philosophy is like a big part of Stoicism. It's actually one of its pillars, is what we call it, is this whole idea of temperance, living a life of self-control. And that like stuck with me like instantly. I'm just like, well, if anything that an addict or an alcoholic has to do is to definitely learn how to live a life of self-control. And so I started getting into the philosophy, started reading about different books within the philosophy. And I wondered if anyone was really like using this for recovery. And you can use Google searches and like find that there are other people who have found the same thing as me, which was it really does help out with like your recovery. But like the sources were very, very like in between. You can like really hardly find them out there. And I even got to the point where some of like these modern Stoics who are writing books these days, I was like even hitting them up with questions about addiction, recovery, how to use Stoicism with it. And every single one of them would like answer back my questions, but they would always have like this little catch to it, which was, here's like an answer I'm giving you, but I am not an addict or an alcoholic. So I don't know like how it relates to recovery. You know, they really didn't have that like deep understanding. But what's crazy is you can read so many of these modern Stoic books, and they even mention the Serenity Prayer, because that is actually like a key to like the philosophy itself. Instead of talking about like what we can change and what we can't change, it talks about what we can control and what we can't control. And so I don't know, I just kind of took it on myself. I'm just like, dude, this sucks that there's no one out there like writing about this stuff, you know? So I always loved writing, and I just kind of started writing myself. I loved finding the Sober Curator because I'm grateful for you guys, because I kind of had an outlet for it. Because the thing that I always laugh about is I'm like, oh my God, you are literally writing about how to use ancient philosophy in recovery. How nerdy does that sound? And how many people are actually gonna like want to read that and seek it out, you know? And like, I would even get made fun of by some of the guys, like other guys in my sober living for what I was doing. But it has been a great experience with the Sober Curator, like finding an audience, being able to share it, because I still am like a huge believer that it could be beneficial to everyone.
I love that, Derek. And we are definitely the land of nerdy misfit toys. And I'm incredibly proud of that as an ethos for sure. And your pieces have been so powerful this year. And I have two memories of you this year that really have stuck with me. And one was after you had gotten your Funko designed and your daughter had helped you with designing it, or really thought that it looked like you. That conversation really stuck out with me. And then it was at one of our Sober Curator monthly business meetings. You had missed a few for a few months, and you came back and just talked really honestly about what you had been going through and were really vulnerable with the group. And it spoke so much to me because everything you were saying, I've been through myself, and I had been through something similar really recent to that time. And so your vulnerability on the screens and on the pages of the site, I think are so important. And especially because there are not as many men online recovering out loud and talking about their sobriety and recovery journeys. And so I love the fact that both you and Daniel are part of the site and contributing in your own unique purpose, because I think that's really good for our collective as a whole.
Thank you. And like, I have to agree almost with the same thing that Daniel said, which is like, I don't have my own like home group right now. I do go to like different meetings, like, but I've come to think of the Sober Curator as like my home group. I do feel it when I haven't been able to attend the meetings. And every time I do attend the meetings, like like I feel better in like my sobriety and recovery.
Oh, you guys, I'm getting all soft and mushy. All right, this is just so good. And you know what I get really excited about is when the contributors start to have relationships with each other without me in the center of it. That makes me probably the most excited. Not that I don't like being the center of attention. We all know that I do. But I just love that this group has come together and how you support each other. And I can see you on social media, sharing each other's stuff, liking each other's stuff. You definitely all bring that to the meetings. You'll often show up and talk about someone else's piece that has really impacted you instead of talking about yourself, which I just always think is so amazing. So Derek, you've been a great addition to the group, and I'm very excited to see what's ahead in store for you in 2025. And for those of you that don't know, Derek is also humble. He has a book. You should definitely check it out, The Sober Stoic. You can find all the information on the site. Anne Marie Cribbin, you are the newest gal joining our crew, hailing from Washington, D.C. So we've got an East Coastie, and I would just love to hear all about your brand is Thirsty for Wonder, and you have a few pieces on the site, and they're getting great traffic. And so people are really interested in what you have to say. And so why don't you share a little bit right now?
Thanks, Alysse. That's exciting to hear that it's getting good traffic. I'm so delighted by that. First, I just want to say, can we do a video sometime of like what everybody has on their desk? Because I'm looking at my desk and I'm like, I have 5 emotional support beverages right now in front of me. I'm just looking at my desk and I'm like, how did this happen?
I would love to play that game with you because I've got, look, I even have, you guys remember these?
Oh yeah.
I
Is it a
mean,
viewfinder?
it is a viewfinder. It is in fact a viewfinder. I would love to play that game with you, Anne Marie.
No.
Absolutely.
So good. I mean, like, and then like my spiritual stuff, right? Like I've got a bowl of salt with rose petals in it so I can like clean my energy between calls, right? Like my desk is pretty hilarious. But anyway, and I'm also just delighted to be in this space. I'm feeling like really giddy listening to everybody and making these connections. I've read everybody's work who's gathered here today. I love hearing the origin stories of the Alysse and Daniel relationship. That is like a digital meet cute. I love that phrase. So it's just really, really good to be in the space with you all. And thanks for having this opportunity. Yeah, I'm Anne Marie, she, her pronouns. I am in Washington, D.C. Sometimes proudly, sometimes not. Sometimes. And I am the founder of the Thirsty for Wonder community. Yeah, I write for the Sober Curator. I'm contributing about Celtic spirituality and sobriety. So kind of like Derek, your story around like looking at this ancient mystic practice and seeing, can this relate to sobriety? Is anybody else doing this? I found myself in the same situation through my own recovery about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit more than that. My personal work at the time in my recovery was really unpacking some generational trauma. Let's just go really heavy, like right away, right? Let's all talk about our generational trauma. But what I was dealing with was the reality of like generational trauma is real, right? We know it's real from our own experiences. We know it's real from the systems of oppression that we see in the world. And all of a sudden I started to shift from like, well, if generational trauma is real, then generational remembering has to be real. Like, what are the origins of community and medicine and healing and support from my own lineage? And I just started to really sit with that for a while and let that percolate. And it led to a shit ton of reading, like a ton of watching videos and learning about my own Celtic heritage. I'm Irish on both sides. But what I started to find out was the ancient Celtic wisdom of the Celtic calendar in particular is really universal. I mean, it's a collaboration with the natural world. It's what's happening right outside our window. We don't need to purchase it. We don't need to, like, we just need to show up and like open our eyes and take a look at what's going on in our natural world and how can we align that with our recovery journey. A recent article that I wrote for the Sober Curator was the season of Samhain, which is Halloween and then into the Celtic New Year, November, and leads us up to the winter solstice in a few weeks. And I wrote about the season of remembering. This is a really beautiful season to connect with our ancestors, to remember the dead, to go inward. We get reflective. There's less light, right? We're embracing the dark. And when we're connecting to our ancestors, it led to the question of like, well, then what's our legacy? What's the legacy of sobriety? Not just the legacy of my relationships and being, but what's the real legacy of my sobriety? What's the gift I'm offering back to the world? Not necessarily my descendants. And as a single plant lady, I don't have any descendants, but what's the gift that I can give to in my relationships and in my community? What's the legacy I'm leaving by showing up and making a commitment day in and day out to be sober and to be fully present and alive in a broken world?
I love that. And I also didn't know a lot about the Celtic calendar prior to you entering into my life. So for me, it's also been like such a learning experience when each of you submit your pieces because I'm the first eyes on it usually. And I get to sit with it and think about the artwork for it. And so it's been a real treat for me to read over your pieces. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more from you for sure.
Thank you so much.
And we'll definitely do an episode just talking about the weird stuff on our desks. Absolutely.
Love it.
One of the things I know for sure as a woman who identifies as being in long-term recovery, I got sober in 2006, is how important spirituality and that journey has been to my recovery. At the Sober Curator, our tagline is getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. And what that really means to me is that we don't care how you got sober. We don't care why you got sober. But if you have chosen it as a lifestyle, we want to be here to motivate, inspire, and entertain. Heavy emphasis on the entertaining part because I got really tired of people saying, "Oh, you're sober. That must be so boring." It's like, no, actually turns out blacking out was pretty boring because I didn't remember any of it. So I've had my own journey with spirituality that has ebbed and flowed and changed and grown over the course of my 18 plus years. And so I'd love to hear from each of you. I know you each have a certain amount of time. I'd love to hear kind of like what you thought, what your spirituality looked at the beginning of your journeys in early recovery and kind of, where is it now? Daniel, we'll just go ahead and circle back with you.
So how's my first I think it was I worked too much yesterday or I haven't had breakfast. But when Anne Marie said, what is the legacy of my sobriety? Man, that just hit me really. I don't know if it's the end of the year, the fact that my birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks. And I mentioned it in group that I found out I was adopted this year. Like, it really just hit me right now. Like, what is the legacy of all the work that I'm doing? And which really ties into what you said about spirituality and where I was June 21st, 2007, walking into Bay Area Recovery Center in Dickinson, Texas. And picture it. I walked in after a night of just partying hard into rehab. And I sat on the couch. I was reading Roseanne's biography. I remember because I had to turn it in and I couldn't read it. I couldn't finish it for 3 months until I got out. And I was mad. That was what I was mad about. I was mad that they took my book. And I was raised Catholic. So the beginning of my recovery, I just had faith that God had something, because my parents always said, God has something for you, because I always got into some kind of trouble and I always managed to get out of it. And my sister, older sister, who was very religious at the time, was like, God must have a plan for you because you always manage to come out unscathed. Like, how do you do this? And I was like, because I cheat life. Ah. And I went in and I sat on that couch in that living room. And I just remember going, like, I'm home. I'm home. I can relax now. For the next 3 months, they're going to take care of me. All I've got to do is follow the rules and I'll be okay. And I actually did 93 days because I didn't want to leave on Wednesday, 92 days because I didn't want to leave on Wednesday. I stayed till Friday. I wanted to stay for the family that I met from all my other housemates. And I was house manager. I wanted to cook a meal before I left the house. And that was my thank you. That was my thank you to everybody for all the support that they given me. And it took several years. It was 2012 when I started practicing my spirituality. And in the last 14 years, the card Devo came about. I was doing support groups for new intuitives. I've grown my practice. I met you. I've done this. People know me now. I can walk around Laguna Beach and people know the card Devo because I post in the Nextdoor app. People come to me, random people that I don't know will message me and go, hey, I saw your post. I have a question. And we'll jump on a Zoom call or a phone call and we'll talk spirituality, we'll talk religion, and we'll talk how my life is not anything but normal. I was on set yesterday filming a movie in fake rain at Universal Studios, dressed in 1910 garb. And I looked around and I was like, this is your life, man. This is your life. And for me personally, to deny that God, the universe, life have something bigger than me planned out there would be stupid to say that I did this all on my own. Not even. It takes, I mean, never mind a village. It takes a whole universe to put this together. I don't think I even dressed myself this morning. Somebody did it for me. I just did that. Like little kids and animals, just dress me. Do this for me. And basically that's what I do with God and the universe. I wake up in the morning, I take a shower. Well, not yet today, but I take a shower and I say my prayers and I'm like, guide me. Just put me where I'm supposed to be today. And I'm truly a blessed, grateful, very spoiled man. And I get to live this wonderful life just because I decided, and the court did too, decided to put me in that recovery home and say, God, the universe, the judge, they all said, I guess they had a meeting behind closed doors and said, can we give this guy a second chance and see what he does with it? And 17 years later, I mean, I'm still here and life is good. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. That was very heartfelt. And I too was struck by what is the legacy that you're leaving behind for your recovery or your sobriety. Yeah, that's a very powerful sentiment. Teresa, also powerful is your artwork behind you of your wedding to your cat. I just want to call that out for anyone that's watching this in a video form. That is, in fact, Teresa marrying her cat.
Unfortunately, that's my late cat. I lost him quite a while ago. You can tell I'm younger in that picture. Here's my current cat, Lucifer, which he's now my soulmate. So as far as spirituality, when I first quit drinking, so when I quit drinking, it was a very long time ago because I was fortunate to get sober at a very young age. And I had an important role model at the time who was Mike. I was taking karate classes and his name's Elmer Glover, and he was a voodoo priest and karate teacher in New Orleans. And he ran a studio called Elmer Glover's Transcendental Karate Studio. And he was really just like a kind but extremely self-contained person. He had that kind of karate self-discipline where he could like punch and you'd hear the sleeve of his gi in the wind and he'd land like right just before your nose and he'd flinch and he'd laugh. Like he had so much self-control. And I really remember thinking that was amazing to me because I was someone who blacked out every night and had no self-control at the time. So I kind of looked to that at first. He gave me some various voodoo charms and spells to do, which sounds like a real stretch, but I too come from Catholic background. And since voodoo is a syncretization of Catholicism and African religions, I felt kind of at home because there were a lot of depictions of the saints that I was already familiar with. So it's been a long time, and my spirituality has just kind of changed throughout the years. But I'd say the three things that I draw from the most are 12-step yoga and Catholicism. I went back to that a little bit in a real take what you like and leave the rest kind of attitude toward it. And I did find something there. I have my grandma was from Ireland, so I have the Ireland connection too, and the Irish Catholic connection. So I feel some power in that, even though I don't agree with everything that the church states, but I still feel the power there. I love the incense and the candles and the statues and the stained glass. That stuff is sort of a portal for me. I don't always pay attention to what they're saying. I just like to go sit there and feel that portal. Yeah, those are my main influences. And then as far as the legacy, that is an interesting thing. And we are all doing that legacy right now by being sober out loud and carrying our message in our own ways to the greater population. And that's a really interesting thing for me because, like I said, I've been sober for ages. I got sober in 1988. It's been 36 years. I was 20 years old at the time. And so I've gone through various times. I've never been completely hidden with it, but I haven't ever been as public as I have the last couple of years really writing about sobriety. And it's a really different feeling. It's kind of a powerful feeling it was something that would come up, but I never led with it. And now I go to industry events because I work as a travel writer, and I work in that industry. And I go to industry events and I lead with, yes, I'm a sober travel. I write about sober travel. I act like it's a real thing, and it's becoming a real thing. And a lot of people are like, what's that? And, I have to make it up as I go along, right? So, yeah, that's all I have for now.
I love that, Teresa. I feel like with the Sober Curator, I've been making it up to yes, sober pop culture. You haven't heard of it? Yes, we're all about sober pop culture. And yeah, there's so much power in that for sure. And I always look forward to reading your pieces of work, both the travel and the yoga pieces as well. Derek, what about you?
So for me, I will admit that early into my sobriety, spirituality was probably the hardest part that I had in recovery. The main reason why is I was kind of doing, I think, a mistake that a lot, I can't say a lot, but I'm sure other people make it out there too, is they so often, it can be so easy to equate spirituality with religion, almost like they're the same thing. And it wasn't a Catholic background, but I was raised up in a very heavily iron-fisted Christian background, with my mom, evangelical Christian. I still even have struggles with talking to her today because it's the only thing that she brings up. And so, I will admit, it's whether I believe in God or not, I still don't know. I still struggle with those questions. And that is what made it so hard for me when I know that I came into early sobriety, because the rehab I went to, the sober living I was living at, they were all AA based. You go in there, you look at the steps, you see the mention of God, and even though they tell you it's just your higher power and it's whatever you want it to be, I was still, every time I heard God, because of my experience, being raised up, it just would shut me down inside. And I do have to say, that's what Stoicism helped me with. What's kind of interesting is when you read, I found spirituality through it. And I also explored other things such as Buddhism and Hinduism and started reading into them more. But it was really Stoicism that started opening me up, because what's kind of interesting is, some of the Stoics, you can see them believing about God. They'll mention God, or what's kind of interesting, showing you how ancient the philosophy is, they'll mention Zeus in their writings. So I find that kind of interesting sometimes. I remember someone mentioned God, they're mentioning Zeus. I'm who do you think their God was? They were that was their culture, But the one thing, so some of them do believe in God, but you can see some like not so much. And it was the ones that were not so much that really helped me develop my spirituality, because the one thing that I couldn't deny, and so my background in college was in science. And so I do believe in science and a lot of the things that science say. But the one thing, even as like a science person, and what the Stoics were saying that like kind of matched, is they could not deny the interconnectedness of everything. That like what was so beautiful, and this is where I gained my spirituality through Stoicism, is that they look at the world as like all of us being one. Like we are all like interconnected with each other, like the people that we affect in our lives every single day. If we think about it, the choices that we make in our life can actually affect people in various places around the world. Even like writing for the Sober Curator, you have like, think of how many people that you can actually reach and that you could be impacting lives. And then even beyond it, like the Stoics, they start talking about the beauty of nature. And I started thinking of it on like the grand scheme of all of the universe. And we think of all of these patterns and the cycles of nature, and all of this stuff that's going on all at this one exact moment that we are living right now. And we were chosen to be a part of it, that we all kind of like serve this role within it, that like in this whatever grand design, whether it was nature, whether it's God, whatever it is, that we are here now in a part of this. And it was really then that I started beginning to gain my spirituality. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, that's what spirituality is. It's like this feeling inside of you, this interconnectedness, greater it's just, it's a feeling that you can have. It's kind of amazing. And so that's really when like I began to gain it. And I still, like I said, I still struggle. Is it God behind the grand design, or is it just nature? But like it kind of really doesn't matter to me right now on a given basis, because all I know is that this greatness out there exists, and like I am a part of it. And that's when I like truly was able to finally gain it.
That's an incredible answer, Derek. And when you said, we're all here at this moment in time, like that really hit me, almost as if we are building this legacy together. Because like, why us? Why now? Why here? And I think hopefully what you can see and what our readers can see is I'm trying very hard to hold space for everyone and all pathways, and let's all work together. We don't have to agree on what each of us believe. We don't have to be like, you're right, I'm wrong. Just like, this is my truth. What's yours? And lean in and learn from it. I grew up in a very Christian home as well, Derek. Both my grandfathers were pastors. I went to a private Christian school where my mother was the teacher. My parents met at choir. I don't know a life outside of Christianity and going to church on Sundays and Wednesdays. And so, but when I fell into my addiction, I definitely pulled away from all of that and was very absent to it, with the exception of showing up for holidays just to appease my parents. And so when I fell into my recovery and fell into the church basements of AA, and I saw the first step, leading with God, I was like, oh, I've got this in spades. I can just skip right past steps 1, 2, and 3, honey, because I already have that all figured out. I already know what I'm supposed to know. That cockiness and ego and really not understanding of what I believe and how I want to practice my life really left me in a dark place around 3 or 4 years sober. I had managed not to drink or use, and on paper, I looked like I was doing all the things, right? But I had never felt so broken and dark on the inside it was worse than when year 3 or 4 was actually worse than day 1 for me. And that's because I was without a God, a higher power, or whatever you want to call it. And I was really grappling with, I can no longer believe what I was told to believe. I need to figure this out. I need to figure out my truth for myself. And I still identify as being a Christian woman. That is what has brought me the most peace. But I also want to lean into everything because the world is huge. And I do believe this all works together. And when there was that viral slideshow going around social media, I don't know when, where it's like slide 1 showed you like here on the planet, slide 2 was like, Earth from the moon, slide 3. And then it just kept going out and out and out and out. And I was just like, first of all, how can I think that I know anything? And second of all, I can't believe I'm over here crying that I have it hard today when all of this is happening. And so just the perspective on being curious, just be curious, right? Be curious, be open, approach things with an open hand instead of a closed fist. And I just feel like you'll get a lot further. And so I just appreciate everything that you had to say there, Derek.
What's actually interesting is that whole thing of panning out, that there is actually a Stoic practice in that. It's called the view from above. And they're like telling you to like view your like life just starting this way and then keep moving out and out and out and see that you're like, even though all this is going on, that you're like a part of it. And I guess the last thing that I wanted to say that is kind of big in what I found, and I think could help anybody in their own recovery, is that we oftentimes feel like we were so alone. But it's like when you understand that like you were part of like this greater thing, you begin to realize that you are not alone, that you are part of something.
Anne Marie, what would you like to chime in here?
Yeah, first I just want to say how much I'm loving this conversation. This is what I hoped for when I got sober, was to have these kinds of really juicy conversations about beliefs and practices and spirituality and the world. I love the conversation about what you were saying, Derek, about kind of the ripple effect of healing, the ripple effect of doing this work and contributing in these conversations, and particularly in sobriety. It reminds me of Father Richard Rohr. He talks about the sphere of influence. And I know that, when I was in a nightly habit of coming home and opening a bottle of wine and cooking dinner, and that was my relaxation, my sphere of influence was cut off right here. My world was very, very small. And in recovery and sobriety, all I have found is expansion, Yeah, so I wanted to share that because that was, as you were speaking, I was just really holding on to that and just wanted to offer that back. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thought. I'm excited about this question. Spirituality was really like the final thing for me that pushed me into beyond sober curiosity to my last day drinking. That was the thing. I grew up a cradle Catholic, and I would grow up in a very devout home. I went to Catholic schools my whole life up until college. We had priests and nuns over for dinner all the time. My mom was the cook in the convent. Like, parish life was our life. Being in the community was our life. And in my early 30s, I considered being a nun. I discerned religious life. I lived in a convent for 5-6 months before I was gently discerned out of it. Before I was told, this may not be your vocation, Anne Marie. Right. And so to find myself in a group of people that identify as spiritual gangsters feels so badass for that girl who wanted to be a nun. It's so rad. I love it so much. With my tattoo on my leg. So anyway, I was a practicing Catholic when I got into my sober journey. I would say that my worldview was still very, very narrow, and there are beautiful things, as Teresa mentioned, there are beautiful things about Catholicism that I hold very near and dear to my heart. That's evolving. I wouldn't say deconstruction is where I am right now, but a relearning and an understanding of my own agency and sovereignty within my spiritual practice. Like, that's brand freaking new, right? To like understand that like I get to have a relationship with my God, and not just doctrine. Like, that's a big, big deal. And I'm discovering that in my 50s. I'm 53 doing this work right now. But what was happening was I was really coming into a place of understanding the curiosity you were talking about, Alysse. I was really starting to get curious about how alcohol was really slowly and sneakily like diminishing parts of my life that I loved. Like it came from my creativity and it was so slow that I was okay with it. And it came from my relationships and led me into isolation. And it was so slow, I was okay with it. But then I got smacked in the face one afternoon where I opened up an email and I was really searching for spiritual community at the time, like a small group kind of a thing. And I got invited to a Bible study, and the title of it was Thirsty Thursday at the Well. And it was a drinking Bible study. It was a bunch of moms and women in their 40s who were going to get together on a Thursday night and read the Bible and fucking drink wine. And I was like, if you're familiar with the passage with the scripture, thirsty, the well, the woman at the well, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
of
the
course.
story about Jesus meeting the woman at the well and recognizing her and meeting her where she is and all of these things. And it's like, well, and then I was just like flabbergasted that like to pour wine on top of that, right? Was like, we're just going to pour wine all over the scripture and drink, and people are going to be drunk talking about scripture. And it was just mind boggling to me. And it was the thing that I needed to be like, whoa, this is so conditioned in the culture. This is everywhere. It is so hard to escape this. It is so easy. Everything everywhere makes it so easy to keep saying yes to the fucking thing that's killing you. And it's killing you creatively, it's killing you emotionally, and now it's killing you spiritually. And I will not stand for that because I had a really tight relationship with my God. I really, really loved my spirituality and my faith life. What I didn't know was that sobriety and recovery were going to blow that open. I was not prepared for that. And so I talk with my clients about, when we're coming into transition and change and everything. I'm like, it's a good thing it happens little by little, because if I saw the whole picture at the beginning, I never would have done it. In the same way that I'm like, if I understand the potential and what I'm truly created for and who I'm truly created to be in the world, if I saw that in one vision of the way God sees me, I would never move towards it, right? I would be so fearful on both ends that I would just be stuck all the time. And so it's been little by little that I have really seen my faith life, my practices, my spirituality really expand. Never, ever, ever did I think in my life I'd be a person writing about, the autumn equinox and how that is a spiritual place and how walking through the woods is a place to encounter wonder, and how wonder is a spiritual practice. Wonder is a spiritual practice. For me, that was the safe space to begin this new exploration of faith, identity within faith, was coming to a place of wonder. It was the thing that I recovered when I gave up drinking, was just this beautiful gift that I was given of being able to notice, like I noticed really, really small things. I noticed the little details. I'm the person that Instagram was originally made for. I want to know what you ate for lunch, right? Like I want to know all the little details about things. And that was reawakened in my sober journey. And so that for me was the safe space to start this rediscovery, was with welcoming wonder and awe back into my life.
That's great. And I really particularly loved what you said about if God had showed you everything all at once that you're capable of doing, how you would have just been like, nope. That hits. That definitely hits right here. Teresa, did you have something you want to add?
Hi again. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was in Akron, Ohio a couple months ago, and I got to go to Dr. Bob's home. So this is where AA started and where they had the first meetings. And they have this really large library that these archivists have been putting together for about 5 years at least. And they've been trying to reassemble the original library, the spiritual library that Dr. Bob had, and that he and his wife, Anne, were, they were really big on spiritual reading. So I got to visit this library. And so you see all the kind of stuff you'd expect, like here are all these Christian books. Here's all these things that influenced that the Oxford group read or that influenced AA. But then there was this whole other section, and the archivist told me, we call this the fourth dimension. And it was all this kind of spiritual stuff that was not Christian. It was from other cultures. And he was telling me about some of the stuff they like to read. And there was stuff that was like channeling spirits. And there was some Japanese spiritualist that Anne was especially fond of. And I thought it was really mind expanding because we do get this message sometimes like, oh, the 12 steps, it tries to be open, but it's so Christian. But I think the founders were maybe more open-minded than we sometimes remember now. So I just wanted to add that.
I love that you add that. And by the time this episode drops, that article will be on the site. And I got to sit with that article recently and go through all the pictures. So it almost felt like I was there. Not exactly, but almost felt like I was there. And I had a somewhat small spiritual experience just going through your piece, Teresa, and looking at all those pictures and thinking about, I wonder how I would have felt if I was in Teresa's shoes that day. And I love what you shared about those archives. I do think that there's just a lot that we don't know. And if we all just stay curious, we're bound to learn some new things over time. Well, and I also want to add that the spiritual gangster section of the site is gotten to be the biggest one. And we don't even have all the players here today. We couldn't fit all of us in one Riverside room. And so you'll want to check back for the next episode that we have that will include Annalisa Six, who writes the Sobercast with Six, and she does astrology readings for the entire month. And she does videos, and sometimes they're 10 minutes, sometimes they're 30 minutes. She's very detailed on what she sees in the stars. We have Lane Kennedy, who does spiritual substance, and that's where she brings in science and DNA and how that intertwines with her spirituality. And then we have Dan Rogers, who is providing us Classy Problems. It's a philosophical look at life and intentionality and slowing down and believing that words matter and thinking about our thinking and doing less and not more. So there's a lot of different interesting tidbits in the House of the Spiritual Gangsters. We certainly hope you'll come by for a visit. And until next time, remember that getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Keep it fun, keep it real, and keep it sober. Thanks for tuning in, because let's be real, we're way more fun than your ex's drunk texts.
If you laughed, learned, or just need more of our voices in your life, honestly, I mean, who wouldn't? Hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and send this episode to your sober or your I swear I'm only drinking on the weekends besties.
And if you have a story, feedback, or hey, maybe you just want to slide into our DMs like it's 2012, well, you know we're here for it. Find more curated magic at thesobercurator.com. And remember, getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober.